Welcome to our Fireside chat, the science of sweat, exploring fitness, glucose and CGMs. We're very excited to have you all here today. My name's Charlotte. I'm Vively's accredited practicing dietitian. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. Now, I'd like to introduce our fantastic experts today. We've got Dr. Michelle Woolhouse and Kate Save. Michelle is an integrative GP, keynote speaker, podcaster, author, and of course, Vively's medical director. Kate is an accomplished dietitian, exercise physiologist, and diabetes educator. Kate is also a successful businesswoman, co-founding Be Fit Food, a company which aims to make nutritious meals accessible for everyone. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone for making the time to come to this live event. If you feel comfortable, you can pop on your video. That would be amazing, as we'd love to see your lovely faces. And throughout the session, please feel free to put any questions in the comments or throughout the chat at any time. We'll be recording this session for anyone who can't make it. Now, firstly, we'll be starting with a fireside chat to lay the foundations of fitness and glucose, and then we'll dive into some audience questions. So Michelle, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. So nice to be with all of you and such a great opportunity to speak to so many people. So welcome. And Kate, I get to talk to my friend Kate. Kate and I have known each other for a long time. We met on the peninsula almost like 15 years ago. Kate's a super successful businesswoman and we're really proud. She's like a really proud export of the peninsula for us. But I've always been such an admirer of her work. She's deeply, deeply passionate and just so inspiring and such a wealth of knowledge. And the combination of nutrition and exercise that Kate holds is really rare. And so I can't wait to get started. So I just wanted to start off with some basics. Just for the sake of really true deep dive understanding. So tell us, Kate, what does metabolic fitness mean and how does it relate to physical fitness as we kind of know it?
To put it into its simplest form, I guess metabolic fitness is really about how our body processes the food that we use and how our body can use the substrates or the energy, the ingredients that we give it, break those down and create something beneficial to the body without doing damage. So the fitness side of it is really that working that muscle or working the body as it is or the metabolism to get the most out of it. And this is very different to physical fitness. It's really about the mitochondria. So we talk about the mitochondria within the cells. So taking everyone back to their days of biology, the mitochondria is like the energy house in the cells and it's like the lungs of the cells. It's constantly taking up substrate and converting it into energy. And if that's not working well, then we really can't process our food properly. And that's where we end up with metabolic dysfunction.
Wow, it's so interesting to sort of see how they relate. And how does that relate to the muscle system in terms of fitness?
Well, the muscle system or your physical fitness, so the muscle is, obviously there's a lot of cells in the muscle and a lot of mitochondria. So the fitter the muscles are, then the more mitochondria you'll have and the more efficient those mitochondria will be, because as we grow our muscles, we grow that ability with, I guess, our circulation, the more mitochondria within the cells and healthier mitochondria. And as muscle increases in size, it's metabolically active, meaning that it can actually process things at a much higher rate. And as we become inactive and do less, and we actually have less active tissue, less metabolism firing, less of our ability to process what we eat. And I have heard some people say, particularly post-menopause, am I carbohydrate intolerant for that reason? And particularly if they are monitoring their blood glucose levels, they could be using a CGM like Vively, and they notice that when they eat carbohydrate, they get a spike in their blood sugar levels. And they said, I never felt like this used to happen in the past. And if I eat too much carbohydrate, I gain weight really quickly. And it's this efficiency of the body to be able to process this metabolic fitness, to process those carbohydrates and convert them in the body. But the muscle is the most important substrate for that, because that's where all of the activity really happens.
So how important is exercise to managing the health of your metabolism?
Exercise is the key thing that we can do in our lifestyles for good health. So nutrition is certainly foundationally important, but our nutrition nourishes us, whereas our fitness, our movement, our physical activity, our exercise, it really is the engine that keeps things ticking along and keeps things moving. So without physical fitness, everything in our body, if you don't use it, you start to lose it. And that's certainly the analogy, particularly after the age of around 40. We really see that steady decline in muscle mass year on year. And the hardest thing is, without getting sufficient exercise, you can't stop that decline in metabolic rate. And in combination with that, it is important, obviously, to have the right amount of protein. But something a lot of people don't talk about is it's not just the protein, but it's the types of amino acids and these essential amino acids. And one of the key amino acids that they talk about for building muscle is actually leucine. And as we age, we tend to eat less protein. So we might have toast with some tomato soup or something at dinner because we can't be bothered cooking, instead of having a meat and vegetables meal or something like that. That leucine is not going to be present in that meal. And the older we get, the less able we are actually to process leucine. So we need more of it to trigger the same effect of muscle building. So you need to do the exercise to be able to build the muscle, but if you don't put the right fuel in, then you can't build it either. So I would think of the exercise almost like the washing machine, where you're churning out all of the bad things. But if you're not putting water into the washing machine, then it's all just mixing up in there and really it's not very efficient. So nutrition in and exercise out.
Well, I like that analogy. I think one of the interesting things that happened to me when I started using a CGM was actually recognizing how different exercises, and even at different times of the day, the exercise had different impacts on my glucose levels. Can you tell us a little bit about why that is the case?
Yeah, look, we are more insulin sensitive in the morning. So in the morning, when we're consuming food, there's a better chance of us being able to process that correctly, or our metabolic fitness, so to speak, is more efficient in the morning. And as the day goes on, it's less efficient. So exercising in the morning is fantastic because it gets your body off to a great start. But as the day goes on, if your meals get bigger and bigger over the day instead of smaller and smaller over the day, you've got this counterbalance of more food going in and less exercise. And that's what becomes quite dangerous. If we're not metabolically fit and we're putting a lot of food in the end of the day and we're not exercising, then we're actually overloading the system. And that's where the glucose spills over and we start to get weight gain eventually, changes in our fat storage hormone insulin, we become insulin resistant. So actually exercising after a meal, and I don't mean high intensity exercise, but going out for a walk or doing some movement in the evening can be quite good, because it helps our body to actually process that food and get that excess glucose out of the bloodstream.
That's amazing. I mean, I think when I started learning about that, I started reflecting on some of the traditional cultures, and they'll often go like when I lived a little bit in Italy for a while, and everybody would be out in the town after dinner, walking off. So there was this cultural thing, and everyone would say hello to each other. And it wasn't like a power walk. It was just a stroll. But it's really interesting to reflect back of how powerful having a walk after dinner or even after lunch is, just to drop those glucose levels and make the body kind of more able to use the fuel that we've just provided. I just thought that was so fascinating, that you think that is sort of a lovely Italian cultural thing, but in fact, somewhere they must have known a little bit about metabolic health.
And I absolutely agree. And particularly in Italy or all the Mediterranean countries, you do tend to have several courses or larger meals. So there is that feeling after going for a walk, even a very slow walk, that you do feel a little bit lighter. And it would be hard to sleep after having a big meal like that. And you're more likely to probably get indigestion, those sorts of things. So going for that walk after a meal would have probably helped settle the stomach and also had that effect of clearing some of the glucose and helping us have a better night's sleep as well.
What I loved about using my CGM is actually noticing the difference in glucose spikes after different kind of exercises. And one of the things that I was really surprised about when I first started using it was how high my glucose would spike if I did like a high intensity workout. Can you tell us why that is? And, you know, should we be worried? You know, should people be worried about that? And is there ever a time to be worried about the glucose spiking after like a heavy workout?
Yeah, look, that I found that really fascinating too. I've actually got my CGM on at the moment. So I've been doing a bit of testing with different foods, different exercise and alcohol. I'll talk to you about that later. But the exercise I found, if I did something higher intensity, like went out for a run or something like that, I would get this huge spike in my blood sugar levels within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the run. And that's because the body is so efficient at putting energy out. You start the muscles contracting, the metabolism's working, so it starts to, you release your glucose into the bloodstream. So this is an efficient way for the muscles to burn energy. If they release energy, it's in the bloodstream so that it's available to us. We feel like we have more energy. And that's why a lot of people can't get up and exercise first thing in the morning without having something small to eat, because we're all genetically different. Some of us can exercise first thing in the morning, but that's because we're fat burners. Some of us can't exercise first thing in the morning without food because we're more carbohydrate burners. And I find that even something small like a mandarin before exercise is enough to give me that little bit of extra energy that when I do my run, I don't get that lull. Certainly after the workout, though, you need to be aware that you will have a steady decline. So it depends on how sensitive you are to that decline, but within sort of 30 minutes to an hour, you'll have a decline. Now, for people that are trying to build muscle mass, that is what they call the window of opportunity for building muscle, because they take in the protein and the body absorbs it twice as quickly as any other time during the day, directly after a workout, that first 30 to 60 minutes. But if people are using exercise for weight management, actually not having food over that period means that your body then has pushed out all of this glucose, the glucose has run out, and you're probably more likely to start burning body fat or burning ketones. So you go into that fat burning state. And like I mentioned earlier, some people are better fat burners than others. That's genetically determined. You can do a basic DNA test for that. But you will know yourself with your body what suits you to go out and exercise, whether you need that little thing to eat first or whether you go out fasted. And going out fasted, you might still get that spike in blood sugar levels, but you will come down later, which can make people crash, you know, a couple of hours after that workout. So if they don't eat anything, they'll get this lull and they'll get really tired after a workout. And then the rest of the day, if they're not eating well and refueling at the right times, they might feel like they're quite exhausted from their workout.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's so many little nuances that we kind of learn, and measuring blood glucose is such a critical kind of factor of how we're going. One of the things that I did want to ask was about what was I going to say? Like, do we know when is the best time to exercise, or is it really just a trial and error? Does the research tell us that we're much better to exercise first in the morning, or is, you know, we get told that exercise just before bed is not great? Like, what's the research telling us as to what the optimal time is, or should we be a little bit more nuanced and a bit more personalized?
My advice as an exercise physiologist is certainly to take a more personalized approach. And the first reason for this is your level of motivation. Because if you only have motivation in the morning and you tell yourself you're going to exercise in the afternoon, the evening, you'll never exercise. So you won't do it anyway. So do it whenever you're most motivated is the number one thing. It's always going to have benefits. So do it when you're motivated. Secondly, I guess exercising too late at night can actually affect sleep with some people. And that's because you're producing some adrenaline and some cortisol and you're firing your system up. So in that case, if you were doing that in the middle of the day, you'll become more productive in the next few hours. Or if you're doing it in the morning, you'll find you're most productive after your workout. But that all comes down to your refueling and your food and your nutrition as well. Because if you let your blood sugar levels dip, and I saw this the other day, my sugars went from a normal level of around 5 when I started exercising up to 9 during that first part of the exercise. And then I fell to about 3.9 within an hour after the exercise. And you certainly feel, to me, it feels like the blood's running out of my face. I actually get this sort of chill feeling when my blood sugar levels drop low. And that's a trigger for me to go, I should have already eaten something. I left it, 10 minutes too late before it sort of got to that level where you almost get an insatiable hunger because you've let it go to an uncomfortable zone.
Yeah, right. How amazing. And I think I learned this from you actually, about the halo effect of blood sugar levels after exercise. Can you tell everyone about that, and how long does it take to kind of reach a halo? Or, the longer that you see a halo, is that better? Is it individualized? What do we need to know about the halo effect and how we can best use it?
Look, the research is quite varied as to how long it lasts, and I think it is quite personalised, and it obviously comes down to the type and the intensity of the exercise, the duration of the exercise. Personally, for me, I find I have a halo of about 20 hours after exercise, where my blood sugar levels don't change too much out of a range. They stay a little bit narrower. Say, for example, if I was to have a piece of cake on a day that I exercised, the peak that I get would be less than on a day that I didn't exercise. And for me, that window seems to last. It's not quite 24 hours. It's about 20 hours. And that's how I know. And I know when I certainly don't exercise, particularly caffeine has a pretty strong effect on me. And it is that first morning coffee when I haven't exercised the day before that I see this rise that I wouldn't otherwise see at those levels. So that's my personal window, and it obviously depends on the frequency of exercise, the time, the type, the age of the person, their muscle mass. There's all these different factors, and obviously what they're eating as well. But there is a definite halo that if I didn't exercise for a few days, my blood sugar levels slowly start to increase a little bit more over time. And I've personally been very aware of this since about the age of 20. I'm not sure if you knew, when I was a child, I had from the age of 2 to 20, I was violently ill, in and out of hospital. I had major surgery, emergency surgery when I was 19, a couple of days before my 20th birthday. They thought I had a tumour in my bile duct. It turned out the tumour was benign, but it left me with a lot of other things afterwards, and gastroparesis being slow digestive rate after that. So I suffered a lot from hypoglycemia or low blood sugar levels. So I've tested CGMs since they first came on the market, and I would finger prick myself because I knew I'd have this funny feeling and I knew it wasn't right in my body. And a lot of people thought that, testing blood sugar levels was just for people with diabetes, or particularly type 1 diabetes, because you absolutely have to. But I also found personally it would affect my energy levels, my mood, my ability to concentrate. And it's something that I find very valuable. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that I've noticed too with using CGM is its relationship to stress as well. So even what I found so fascinating with your halo effect of noticing when you don't exercise the impact of caffeine versus when you do exercise and the impact of caffeine. And exercise is such a powerful modality for managing our stressors. So, emotional stressors, but also glucose stressors, or any of the little stressors within our diet can be managed by some of the healthy behaviors that we can implement. In a way, we can kind of have our cake and eat it too, to a certain degree. So it's so nice to hear you have those observations, particularly with your nutritional knowledge and your exercise knowledge. It's, I'm learning so much. So I wanted to know what your top tips are to improve your metabolic health with exercise. Like, what would you, and does it change within kind of age groups as well?
Yeah, and I would certainly say exercise when you're most motivated, just to make sure that you get it in. Whatever time of the day that you have the most energy, use that as your window for exercise. Secondly, certainly monitor your blood sugar levels if you have that ability, so that you can see the impact that it has and you can understand that and you can prepare for that better. Because I would see a lot of people that would come to group classes first thing in the morning, and then they'd finish and they'd have all this energy, but then they'd say to me a couple of days later, oh, every time after my workout, I'm nearly asleep by lunchtime. I'd say to them, well, have you eaten? No, I was fasting. And their body obviously doesn't use fat very well, and their blood sugar levels have crashed and they've just got no energy. And other people, the fasting approach works for them, but you have to be a fat burner, and you have to know whether you are a fat burner or you're a carbohydrate burner a little bit more, and understand what's happening to your sugar levels after the workout. Secondly, I would highly recommend doing some strength-based exercise as well. And particularly as we age, knowing that we lose muscle mass over time, you need to counteract that. You can't ignore the fact that if you don't train your muscles to be stronger and to grow, then they shrink with age. So you need to constantly be trying to grow them to even be able to maintain them. And that is probably the key to the metabolic fitness. We rarely see children with poor metabolic fitness unless they do have some sort of early onset chronic condition. So I think it is certainly something that we can all do, is getting resistance training. And that can be as simple as doing push-ups against a wall, or it doesn't need to be push-ups on your knees or on your feet, but against a wall is enough to get your triceps, your chest, your back, get them all working and build some muscle. Even squats in and out of the couch, I find, is really, really, it's an important movement. That the time that it takes just to get in and out of your couch, and try not to use the armrest. So try and always, have your hands by your side if you can, and getting up and down without, across your chest. So important, because that's a critical movement, for every year of our life. And it's something we need to get better at as balance and muscle strength declines.
Amazing. Actually, when I found out about some of the ways in which they measure longevity criteria, and one of them is how many squats you can do in a minute, and the other one is grip strength. So muscle strength is one of the most convincing measures for longevity, which I found incredible. So Kate, when do you, obviously, you can start to build muscle at any age. We could put a 90-year-old in the gym and improve their muscle strength. But, if we had the ideal kind of candidate or whatever, when would we want to start building muscle?
You should be doing it from an early age. And we know certainly in children, my kids do gymnastics, and that is their foundations of strength. And ever since they've started that, all of a sudden they're good at athletics, they're good at swimming. They were terrible at athletics and swimming years ago, but their muscle strength is slowly building up with those repetitive tasks over time. But by the age of 40, when we start to see this steady decline, that's the best time to start. the best time for anyone to start is now. Doing something is better than nothing. So yeah, hands across the chest, standing in and out of the chair. Even, the push-ups against the wall, if you can, push-ups on your desk or on a table, or on your knees, but always trying to progress that little bit further. And look, even if you've got dumbbells down beside your couch or your kitchen bench, those little things, calf raises, holding on to the kitchen bench, going up on your toes and down and up and down will help with balance. So there's so many little things we can do while we're waiting for the microwave or the stove or the oven, and squats. And you just can't underestimate the power of those exercises for longevity.
So if someone was in the gym and they've got a good level of fitness, what I often sort of see is that there's a little bit of, I guess, mixed messages in terms of what we should be doing. Should we be doing repetitions, or should we be trying to build the amount of, I guess, weight that we're doing? Like with resistance exercise, is it enough to do 20 push-ups a day and 10 sit-ups, or should we be building that and then loading it? And what's the best thing that we can do for that?
Yeah, look, there's obviously different formulas for, for building core strength, like that real lifter car strength. You're doing a small number of repetitions, maybe 6 to 8. But for muscle hypertrophy or muscle growth, that's where everyone, the general population, should be working. And that's really 12 to 15 repetitions. Anything beyond 15 or 20 repetitions is more endurance. You're less likely to build strength. It might help with muscle tone. It might help with burning calories and burning energy. But your strength is really when you have to give up at number 12 to 15. So if you can push yourself to a level where you can't get another one out at 12, 13, 14, 15, that is the level you should be working at. And once you get to the point that 15 is easy, you're going to stop getting the benefits. So you need to find a way to change the incline of whatever you're using to make it a little bit harder, or the step a little bit higher, or the chair a little bit lower, or whatever it might be. So as long as it's hard by 12 and impossible by 15, you've hit the mark on building muscle mass or hypertrophy.
Wow, that's going to set me in good stead tomorrow. Tell me a little bit about protein, because I feel like there's a bit of mixed messages, like people having their protein shakes and all of that sort of stuff, but it feels like there's mixed messages in terms of like the quality of protein and how we can get it. Like when we exercise more, do we need more protein? And how do we know how much?
Everybody needs roughly 1 gram of protein per kilo of their weight. Yeah. And that's really based on even lean body weight. So if you're carrying a lot of body fat mass, then maybe you don't need quite as much protein. But in saying that, after the age of 40, our requirements for protein actually increase, because our ability to absorb it and our the switch that turns on the muscle building, which is triggered by leucine, which is one of the amino acids in any sort of meat-based protein or dairy, any animal proteins, that threshold just keeps going up as we age. So I would say, as a rule of thumb, trying to get 20 to 30 grams of protein at every single meal as an absolute bare minimum: breakfast, lunch, dinner. And even when you're having a snack, you might be having a piece of fruit. I'd always encourage people to have a couple of tablespoons of yogurt or a handful of nuts with the fruit to get protein at every meal and every snack. So my rule is 5 to 10 grams of protein as a snack. So that could be a couple of bits of cheese with your pear or your apple. That's delicious. And some walnuts. Or it could be having, a small tub of yogurt with your fruit at morning or afternoon tea. But at main meals, your 20 to 30 grams of protein is roughly 100 grams of chicken, beef, fish, give or take. So less than that and you're not going to get enough protein. So most people tend to focus their protein on the evening meal and they forget about breakfast and lunch because it can be difficult, particularly at breakfast. I hear a lot of people have 1 egg on toast. Well, actually, to get 20 grams of protein, you need at least 4 egg whites with a couple of egg yolks to get you 20 grams of protein. So it seems like a lot, but my hack there would be to buy the egg white in the carton and buy your regular, lovely eggs that you might get at the market or wherever else. Have 2 of those eggs in the pan and then pour in, half a cup of the egg white to boost that omelette or scrambled eggs or whatever you're making to your 20 grams of protein. And that is guaranteed first thing in the morning, particularly if you've done a workout in the morning, to make sure that you're triggering that protein synthesis, that muscle building. If you're only having 1 egg, it's not going to work. It's not going to be enough. It's better than having the toast with no egg. But, if it's 1 egg, you're going to have to find some cheese to go with it and some, maybe a glass of milk, or maybe having a latte. So you're getting some milk there, but you've got to be creative with trying to get enough protein during the day because it is a bit of a challenge. Yeah. You asked about protein supplements. Now, I prefer trying to get it from whole foods. However, if you've got people that aren't breakfast people, but they can tolerate, say, a smoothie, then you could put your favorite frozen fruits into a smoothie and some yogurt and some milk. But getting in 1 or 2 big scoops of protein will guarantee you're going to get your 20 to 30 grams of protein in the morning. So to me, protein is a booster. It's not a meal replacement. So you use it to boost the nutrition in something that you're eating and boost the protein, not to replace it.
So amazing. It's so integral. And even just listening to you speak just kind of makes me realize just how vital a dietitian's kind of viewpoint of it, because this is not knowledge that all of us have. And just having that, that unique sort of personalized kind of knowledge is just so powerful. So I think on that, I'm going to open up to questions from the audience. We've got a big audience today, which is fantastic and shows how important this topic is. That was just brilliant. So Charlotte, do you want to see if we got any questions from the audience?
Thanks, Michelle. So if you've got questions and you're happy to be on video, you can use the raise your hand function in Zoom. I'll start with some of the questions that we got through the chat. So the first one from Deborah was, do you believe that you require more exercise post-menopause to maintain good glucose and insulin sensitivity?
Absolutely. And I know, Michelle, you would have a lot to say about this as well, but our metabolic fitness certainly is declining at this point because of the hormone changes. But as we age as well, remember that we're losing muscle mass unless we're consciously trying to build it every day, doing that hypertrophy repetition of exercise, those 12 to 15 repetitions at least 3 times a week. And we become more insulin insensitive. So there certainly needs to be a step up in daily exercise, or counteracting that with the foods that we're choosing and being more conscious of having lower carbohydrate but more nutritious foods, less of the white bland foods. So people say to me, oh, do I need to give up pasta? So no, you turn the bowl upside down, where you have a bowl of bolognese sauce with a handful of pasta on top, not a bowl of pasta with a handful of bolognese. And yes, you can have the cheese as well. Have the cheese and the bolognese, just have your 10 bits of pasta, not your 30 to 50 bits of pasta that we might find in a big bowl when you go out somewhere.
That's a great little tip. What I would say too is that we know from the research that we actually, as we reach menopause, we start to actually have a decreased energy requirement just on a day-to-day basis. So on average, it's about 300 calories less on a day-to-day basis. And that takes people by surprise. And I think one of the things that I like to kind of show people is that sometimes weight creeps on, like we might put on a kilo every year, and then in 10 years, we're 10 kilos heavier than what we were 10 years ago. And so we really have to be careful at menopause if we don't want to carry excessive weight. We want to look after our metabolic health, is that we do actually require less calories from food in which to do that. So Kate was absolutely right in the sense of like better nutrient dense food and focusing on things like protein and essential fats rather than big bulky carbohydrate handfuls can actually help us to lower that calorie issue, so that we can focus on that and prevent that slide, that creep that many people actually recognize at menopause.
And I thought that was a great stat, Michelle, about the 300 calories less a day. So if we turn that into exercise, we roughly burn about 50 calories every kilometre that we walk at a pretty cracking pace. So that's 6 kilometres a day just to maintain weight, not to lose weight. That is just to maintain weight. And that's where reducing your calories becomes so important. And actually getting advice if you need it from a dietitian, because you don't want to cut calories and all of a sudden become deficient in all your vitamins, minerals, and you're not getting enough nutrition because you're cutting your portions without changing the portions. And I don't like the idea that it's all about portion control. It's all about the right foods, and like that bowl of pasta, if you just had the smaller bowl of pasta but you didn't up your bolognese sauce and your cheese and reduce the carbohydrate, well, you're going to start to malnourish because you're not getting enough vegetables in the bolognese sauce and enough protein.
Great point. Fantastic.
So I've had a really interesting question about exercise at night. So if you have to exercise at night, so say soccer training in the evening, is there something that you can do to support positive sleep?
I'm happy to go there. I would certainly say it's going to be about your nighttime routine and sleep hygiene. So I'm a big believer in sleep hygiene. So that really means having no blue light at least 2 hours before bed. Use a sleeping mask if you need to, if there's any light coming into your room. Winding down with some sort of whether it's meditation or you're listening to something that puts you in that calming mood, or even doing what they call box breathing, where you're taking a breath in for 3 seconds, holding it for 3 seconds, breath out for 3 seconds, holding it for 3 seconds, doing something to calm the nervous system. So if you can use your mind to control your breathing, then the breathing will control the hormones, the cascade of hormones that would have been pushed out from the exercise, and then you will get better sleep. And creating a routine, for me, I have some sort of sleepy tea every night, whether it's chamomile or it's some sort of mixture of things. I have a whole drawer full of all these wonderful teas, but that's my sleeping routine. I have my small cups, so you're not getting up, going to the toilet, of a sleepy tea. I have a sleeping mask. I listen to something that just takes the thoughts of the day away, do some breathing, and before I know it, I am fast asleep. And that would be even if I have done a workout in the evening, but creating a routine that you can stick to.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, for a lot of people, they do exercise at night and they sleep perfectly fine. So there is a unique kind of proposition to that as well. Like if it suits you and it's, you're managing other kind of aspects of your life, and that's part of your social and enjoyable part of your week, then I wouldn't worry, too much about it. And then I guess, as Kate said, is if exercise is stimulating, if you can even double down on some of that really calming, like maybe a bath or a nice, hot shower alongside some of those other techniques, that might allow you to kind of just drop in.
Oh, my other favorite one is try and read something really important that you need to do the next time, like a scientific journal, and that sends you straight to sleep. There's, something really painful, some constitution or something that you need to read.
Something from the BMJ.
So the next question that we've got is about choice of exercise. So this, so Georgina's written, I'm wondering whether I might have adrenal PCOS. Stress is an issue for me in my case. Would gentler exercise be a better choice than high intensity training? So things like yoga.
Do you want to answer that? I'm happy to.
No, you go, Michelle.
Yeah. So I do actually see it in my clinical practice that some people do over exercise. There's a lot of, I guess, cultural push that sort of more is better, and that striving and this high intensity exercise is really the best and only kind of form of exercise that people need to pursue. Having said that, what I find with people that are stressed, sometimes exercising at a really high intensity actually increases the stress on their body, and that is actually counterproductive, meaning that people are doing high levels of exercise. If they're really quite stressed, it's actually leading to weight gain. And so they're defeating a lot of the purpose. I've seen that multiple times over the years. It's quite distressing for the person because they keep doing more and more and more. And in fact, what they're trying to achieve, which is weight management, is actually going in the wrong direction for them.
I've seen exactly the same, Michelle. And exercise drives appetite. So you tend to get hungrier, particularly after high intensity exercise, not straight away, but hours later. And that obviously, like you mentioned with the blood glucose drop, you get this drop and then you get this insatiable hunger, and you try and balance out the exercise and the food. And, you know, actually an hour workout in a gym might burn 300 to 400 calories, be highly unlikely to burn more than 500 calories, but a regular size meal is around 500 calories. So unless you're very cautious of what's going in that meal, or it's very low carbohydrate, it's quite difficult to get it to under 300 calories. So we tend to overeat if we over-exercise as well.
Yeah, it's a great point too. And I think the benefit, I mean, with polycystic ovarian syndrome, if that is the underlying factor too, there's issues with the ability for the glucose to actually enter into the cell. And so it's often associated with quite a lot of fatigue. And so sometimes, like as Kate said, if you're over-exercising, you're not getting enough nutrition, and then fatigue sets in, that's actually also another cause of stress. So when we're not actually feeding the cells, the body goes into a state of stress because they need to kind of ramp up the energy in which to kind of survive. So we go into our fight and flight, which is a further stress response. And to be fair, on yoga, you know, it's one of the oldest known exercise strategies on the planet. It's about 2,500 years old. And they have a lot of research going on in India. They have hospitals where they research the powerful benefits of yoga for a whole raft of different diseases, called yoga therapy. And so really, it's really critical, and can be a profound shift in people's body awareness, in their stress management skills, and in actually, so almost magically, we don't actually know why, probably some of the yogis would know a lot more than me about it, but it can have a profound shift in how we manage individual illnesses. It's a great question. Thanks for asking that.
I think as well, in Vively, we talk so much about the holistic approach. So if time is such a factor for you, including yoga as part of your stress management, as well as exercise, I think can be such a powerful tool to sort of like tick off two boxes as well.
That's great. Yeah.
So we've had a question about building muscle mass. So if that's one of your goals, is it ideal to be fasting to do that? So I'm guessing this is sort of longer fasting.
Yeah, so there's two. Our body is generally either in a catabolic state, which is a breakdown and a burning state, or an anabolic state, which is a building state. So if you're trying to build muscle, you need to be anabolic, and those anabolic chemicals, hormones in the body, you can trigger them through strength exercise, but then to actually get the repletion and get that development of the muscle, you need to put the food in at the right time, which is at 30 to 60 minutes straight after exercise. The muscle's primed to receive that energy, and that is the quickest, easiest way to build muscle. Beyond that, it can take 24 hours to really recover from that workout, which means the next workout that you do, if they're too close, you're actually breaking down muscle each time because the muscle's not recovering instead of building muscle and getting stronger. So timing of workouts, timing of food, and the amount of food, the types of food is really important. And that trigger, that leucine, which is an amino acid, is a part of the protein as well.
Amazing.
Okay, so next up, we've got a quick question for you, Kate, as well. You mentioned the basic DNA tests for whether you're a fat burner or a carb burner. Do you mind telling us where we can find that information, and do you have any other recommendations about finding out more?
Yeah, so actually Michelle and I are on another panel tomorrow at the Digital Health Festival with the founder of My DNA, Alan Sheffield. His father was Professor Les Sheffield, and he actually won the Nobel Prize for discovering the genetic test for Down syndrome during pregnancy. And when he finished his career and was retiring from his work in the hospital, he actually said to his son, who at the time was working for one of the big IT companies, he said to his son, I think we could create something and help everyday people actually access these genetic tests for their health. So My DNA brings the basic genetic tests, so things like your fitness genes, whether you're built for power or endurance, your caffeine genes, so how well you process caffeine. I'm a poor processor of caffeine, so I can't drink it after 12 o'clock. It's all the things you really know about yourself anyway. But when you have it in a genetic test and you see it on, you see it on the app, you see it on paper, you go, oh, I knew that. And, it tells you whether you have a good capacity for actually breaking down certain vitamins and minerals and storing those vitamins and minerals. So it's called My DNA. We sell their kits at Be Fit Food, but My DNA has them in certain pharmacies as well. So
I've used it a lot in clinical practice. They have a fantastic one about measuring how you respond to various different medications, which was really profound from a general practice perspective as well. So they've got a great website with lots of information.
There's so much coming out there, like just so much more that we can learn about our bodies as well, which is amazing. So we've got a question from Diane. She said, my glucose is spiking up from 4.9 prior to exercise up to 7.9 or 9.9 from any type of exercise. I exercise 3 hours after breakfast and don't feel hungry. I'm wondering if this spike is something to be concerned about, or could this just be normal for me? It stays high for the entire time I'm exercising, and the same happens in the sauna. It follows by a drop to my normal baseline afterwards, and food doesn't cause a high spike like exercise.
Michelle, happy to comment either way.
I'm happy to comment. It sounds like that's a normal response for you. And particularly, there's lots of clues to that, as in it drops down really quickly after you exercise, that you don't feel hungry. So it's not like a stress response for you. And if you're not putting on weight or feeling, more exhausted kind of long term, I think that's a really good sign. It means when you're active, your muscles are actually pumping out the glucose that they've stored for your cells to activate and to receive the energy that's required for your exercise program.
And the clearance as well. If she's going back to normal baseline levels, it's showing your insulin tolerance or your threshold, you don't have that resistance. So it sounds like it's a healthy metabolism, I would say. Yeah.
Do you mind if I just add a little bit more to that?
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, my only issue is that my hemoglobin A1C is 5.5, which is, I know it's, normal, but it's just a bit higher than what I would have expected from food alone. So wearing the CGM allowed me to identify where my spikes are. And unfortunately, anytime I'm stressed, it's also spiking really high as well. And I'm stressed really often. So maybe that's accounting for my higher hemoglobin A1C. So
this is what we use Vively for, is to find really good clues, because a lot of people, particularly really proactive patients, are very good at the food and exercise. It's kind of, culturally we've been taught that, and so when you're on a fitness junket, you're looking at food and exercise, but very rarely do people look at things like sleep and stress. And sometimes, we live in a culture that kind of reveres stress. So we've sort of normalized it, like, hi, how are you? Busy? Yep, great, busy, good, busy, unbusy, whatever. So we really have normalized that as part of it. So it's fantastic that you recognize that, and perhaps maybe heading in that direction for your own benefit. Go, wow, like that's really interesting. I'm stressed about whatever you're stressed about. It might be multiple different factors, but really learning fantastic relaxation techniques for yourself might be quite a profound shift for you. And maybe a little bit of that critical kind of mass of why you're going so high. Because that little bit of extra cortisol dysregulation for you may be part of the picture. Certainly it's a natural physiological response for you because it matches what we know to be normal, but yet there may be some more nuances for you to take on personally and just to really review for your own benefit long term.
I would also add to that, have you ever tracked your sleep through an Oura Ring or an app or any of those devices?
Yeah, so I wear 2 watches. I'm one of those tracking people. So I track by 2 devices, and I've also had professional sleep tracking done as well, just because sleep is my major issue. And any time where I got less than 8 hours sleep, that's enough for me to be a bit fatigued. But if it was a bad night, my glucose response the next day was even bad for food, normal foods that don't cause a spike. So I'm guessing that made me, insulin resistant for maybe a day until I got sufficient sleep again. So sleep is my #1 priority. And obviously stress reduction as well. Even just, having the awareness of what's causing the spike, and in that time, just implementing some breathing techniques has been enough to lower the spike a little bit. So, I've just finished my 2 weeks, but I'm going to have to do it again because these stress reduction practices, I'm not going to stick unless I get that biofeedback.
Right.
I also use another app called the Inner Balance, heart math. Yeah, so when I use that religiously, like 5 minutes 3 times a day, that also gives me the biofeedback in regards to my stress response. But I find if I don't have a device telling me, I'm really not good at making the change myself, because whilst these stressors, to me, they're exciting things. Like, I'm excited. It's not like a terrible stress, but that's still giving the same response. And it's still causing things like, higher blood pressure, higher glucose, all the normal things from the stress response, which I don't necessarily want that to be in that state all the time.
Yeah, they're great insights, Diane, and really fabulous for you to kind of work through, and also for the whole group to actually understand that, we can be doing all of these wonderful things, in this way, but if we're not looking at all 4 pillars, they'll impact the other 4 pillars. And so it's really this holistic approach. I often say to people, like, the whole is more powerful than the sum of its parts. So if we're only looking at 3 parts and there's 4 parts to the puzzle, we've really got to look at that 4th part so that we can really accommodate that holistic approach. And then there's, it's a much more powerful intervention. So thank you for that. Yeah, great question.
No worries. Thank you for answering it.
So I'll throw in one last one, I think. So this comes up a lot in the chat as well. What is the impact of a sauna on your body? So is it the same as exercise?
Really good question. My thoughts are yes, because you're increasing your internal body temperature, which causes stress on the body. It's certainly not giving you the same workout to the muscles. So it's not going to give you the same long-term effects, because it's the muscle contraction and that hypertrophy workout that builds the muscle and gives us that metabolic fitness. So the sauna has its benefits, but it's not in replace of exercise, but it will cause a stress similar to exercise in the body.
It kind of promotes a thing called hormesis. So we sort of stress the body, and then ideally with saunas, it's actually can be quite relaxing to sort of be there, because you're not actually pumping the muscles and the bones and those kind of things. So if you can try and really relax in the sauna and actually just get to a point of an edge. So when we get to an edge of stress, the body can develop a sort of sense of resilience within it. But again, yes, it is a stressor, but what we want to do is make sure we're not overly doing saunas. So temperature tends to matter. And we don't know, I've been speaking to a professor friend of mine about the combination between saunas and cold water plunges as well. So watch this space. I've got a podcast coming up about that. And there's a lot of emerging evidence. But a lot of the colder places like, Finland, Norway and Sweden and the icy areas do saunas, but they also live in very, very cold environments. So, it possibly pertaining also to the environment as well. But yes, there has got some good research on longevity for saunas and good research on saunas for detoxification. It's not the same as exercise.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I think that's unfortunately all we've got time for. There's obviously stacks of unanswered questions, so I'm sorry to everyone. It's been such an incredible turnout, but I think we've really had an opportunity to really start to look at some really key questions for people. What a wonderful discussion. I want to thank Kate for joining us and being our first special guest on the Vively Fireside chat. And we're doing a webinar every month. Next month in July, we've got Joanna McMillan, who is a little mini TV celebrity / nutritionist. She's fantastic. She's a researcher. She's a wealth of knowledge. And we're going to be talking about fat and metabolic health and CGMs as well. So just wanted to extend a really special thank you to Kate Save and all of the wealth of knowledge that you've shared today to our Vively community. And a thank you to Charlotte and Katie for organising this amazing little event. And we will put up this chat and the recordings will be available to you all. So you can go back and you can have a look and make sure that you sign up to the regular webinars, and really piecing information over time is so vital. So for some of you who are still confused, don't worry, there's lots of confusion. This is really a building up of information over time and, self-knowledge and self-exploration. So it's sometimes good to be confused. So don't worry too much. Keep going and keep exploring and keep adventuring. And have I missed anything? No. Just want to wish you a wonderful evening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Can I add, Michelle, we were going to
sure.
offer, Vively's got the discount with BeFit Food if anyone is interested, if you want to put it in the post afterwards.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, that is absolutely super exciting. So BeFit Food and Vively are like a match made in heaven, to be honest, because we know, Kate and I have known each other, as I said, for 15 or so years, and we know each other's philosophy really well. And Kate's been really working on improving metabolic health at the primary kind of level for so many years. And her rapid weight loss program and her metabolic reset program is something I've been suggesting to patients for a long, long time. And the combination of using CGM and testing out Kate's product with the basic kind of personalized insights that Vively offers is a really incredible opportunity. So take this chance to explore BeFit Food website and the code, and make sure you cut and paste the code to get 10% off for BeFit Food.
Thank you, everyone.